Ladies and gentlemen, gather around because today we are about to witness what happens when a man, fueled by rage, betrayal, and a YouTube tutorial on how to outsmart your cheating wife, decides to take justice into his own hands. Mike was just minding his own business, scrolling through social media like any sane adult wasting their life on the internet, when suddenly, boom! There it was. A photo of his beloved wife, his Katie, passionately making out with some wannabe Casanova in an apron. The caption, "When you lose a dare but win a good time, no regrets, best bachelorette ever." Mike's reaction? Imagine a dog who just realized his owner gave the last piece of bacon to the cat. Pure betrayal. His heart pounded, his vision blurred, and his fingers trembled as he zoomed in on the photo, hoping, praying that it was some weird Photoshop joke. Nope, it was real. And the worst part? The comments were full of laughing emojis, heart eyes, and OMG, Katie is wild. Now, let's be fair. Katie wasn't technically a cheater in the full-blown secret affair with the pool boy way. No, this was more like a drunk girl peer-pressured by friends and bad decisions kind of cheating. But for Mike, same difference. So he did what any rational, loving husband would do. He stormed into the living room where Katie was binge-watching a crime documentary like she hadn't just turned into a viral sensation overnight. "Katie!" he roared, holding up his phone like it was Exhibit A in a murder trial. Katie, blissfully unaware, blinked at him like a guilty puppy. "Huh? Would you like to explain this?" He shoved the phone in her face. And then it happened. That moment where the brain tries to process incoming disaster. Katie's eyes widened, her jaw dropped, and her soul visibly left her body for a second. Oh my God," she whispered. "Wait. Okay, hold on. Mike, babe, I was drunk." "Oh, were you?" he snapped. "I thought maybe you were just thirsty for a waiter." Katie winced. "It wasn't like that. The girls dared me to do it. I didn't want to look weak." "Oh, thank God," Mike clapped his hands. "Because I was so worried about your reputation among a group of tequila-chugging lunatics." Katie sighed, grabbing his hands. "Mike, I swear, it was stupid, it was reckless, and I regret it. I love you, I would never actually cheat. You know that, right?" Mike squinted. Did he, though? A normal man would maybe go to couples therapy, maybe take time to heal. But Mike, oh no, Mike had a plan. "You love me?" he asked, crossing his arms. "Of course." Katie nodded desperately. "You'd do anything to prove it?" "Yes, anything. I'll make it up to you." Oh, sweet, sweet irony. Katie had just walked into his trap. Mike leaned in, smirking. "Fine, if you really love me, we're doing things my way now. My rules, my conditions, no arguments." Katie hesitated, but then straightened her shoulders. She was stubborn. She never backed down from a challenge. If proving her loyalty meant jumping through Mike's ridiculous hoops, then so be it. "All right," she said, lifting her chin. "Deal." Oh, Katie. Poor, naive Katie. She had no idea what she had just signed up for. Because Mike? He wasn't going to ask for some boring apology dinner. No. Mike was about to make her life a living comedic hell. Mike woke up the next morning with a sense of purpose. No, not in a gonna-fix-my-marriage kind of way, more like a villain in a revenge movie kind of way. He wasn't going to be the clueless husband who forgave his wife's drunken cheating just because she pulled out the old puppy dog eyes routine. No, sir. So, as Katie snoozed away, probably dreaming about more reckless life choices, Mike sat at the kitchen table, sipping his coffee with a smirk and crafting what could only be described as the ultimate relationship endurance test. This list wasn't just a list, it was an unholy document of psychological warfare. Behold, Mike's list of insane conditions. No social media. At all. Because apparently, she couldn't be trusted around like buttons and thirst traps. No girls' nights. Ever. Because her friends were basically the devil in high heels. All phone notifications must be visible at all times. No more, "Oh my God, My phone just randomly died for 8 hours nonsense. She must make him breakfast every morning, and no, a bowl of cereal didn't count. 1 hour of relationship TED Talks every night. If she wanted to prove her devotion, she better be ready to analyze the hell out of healthy communication techniques. Workouts together every morning at 5 a.m. Because hey, improving yourself wasn't just a metaphor. No spending money without approval. If she wanted a Starbucks, she had to submit an official request to King Mike. She must compliment him 10 times a day, whether he looked good or not. And for the grand finale, his absolute masterpiece. Mike was allowed to go on a date with any woman he wanted, just to keep things even. Oh yes, this was bulletproof. There were many more stupid things, but it's tedious to list them all. He chuckled to himself as he printed the list, folded it neatly, and strutted back into the bedroom like a man who had already won. "Morning, sweetheart," he said with fake warmth. Katie sat up groggily, rubbing her eyes. Morning." Mike handed her the sacred document. "Here's the deal. If you truly regret what you did and actually want to make this marriage work, you'll agree to every single condition on this list. No negotiations." Katie took the paper, still blinking away sleep. She looked at him, then at the list. And then she started reading. For the first few seconds, her face was neutral. Then mild confusion. Then shock. "Mike," she said slowly, scanning the list again. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious," he said, arms crossed, mentally preparing for her total meltdown. A deep sigh escaped her lips as she continued reading. Her fingers slightly twitched when she hit number 9. This was it. This was the breaking point. Any second now she was going to flip, scream that he was being unreasonable, storm out, and boom, Mike would be free. But instead, Katie put the list down, looked him dead in the eyes, and said, "Okay, I'll do it." "Wait, what?" Mike blinked. "You... what?" "I said I'll do it," Katie repeated, nodding was that actual genuine remorse on her face? "I mean, yeah, it's a lot, but if that's what it takes to prove to you that I'm serious, then okay, I'm in." Mike's brain short-circuited. His entire plan depended on her quitting within 48 hours. He hadn't mentally prepared for, well, this. "You're okay with me going on dates with other women?" he asked, stunned. Katie bit her lip, clearly struggling, but then she nodded. "If that's what you need to feel better about what I did, then, yeah, I deserve that." Mike squinted. Was this a trap? Was she trying to pull some reverse psychology sorcery on him? He had expected tantrums, screaming, maybe even a dramatic, "you're controlling and toxic" speech. But submission? Oh, this was not part of the plan. For the first time since this whole mess started, Mike had no idea who was actually winning. Mike leaned back on the couch, sipping his coffee like a man who had just won the lottery of pettiness. The great betrayal had happened, and now justice was being served. Cold, with a side of extra suffering. Katie had agreed to every absurd, over-the-top condition he had thrown at her, and Mike, he was just sitting back, waiting for her to crack. But then, something terrifying happened. Katie didn't just comply. She went all in. Step 1. The Friend Massacre. Within 10 minutes, Katie had pulled out her phone and written the most dramatic breakup text ever sent to a group of tequila-guzzling enablers. "Ladies, this is it. Our friendship ends here. You betrayed me, and I let myself become someone I'm not. Goodbye. Forever." And just like that, boom. She left the group chat. Mike, who was casually pretending not to eavesdrop, had to bite his tongue to stop himself from choking on his own shock. Step 2. The password surrender. Then, without even hesitating, she handed over her phone like it was some kind of sacred offering. "All my passwords," she said, looking him dead in the eyes. "Email, Instagram, Facebook, even my food delivery account." Mike nearly fell out of his chair. "Wait, even DoorDash?" She nodded. "Even DoorDash." Now this was war. No woman just casually hands over her entire digital existence like this. Not without a hidden agenda. But Katie wasn't done. Oh no. Step 3. The GPS hostage system. Next morning, bam. Mike woke up to a text message from Katie. Attached was a photo of her standing outside their house, holding up a piece of paper that said, "I am here." Mike nearly dropped his phone. "Oh, she's really lost her damn mind," he muttered. Every single morning, at exactly 7 a.m., she would send a new location check-in, sometimes in their own damn kitchen like she was under some sort of court-ordered house arrest. And every time, he laughed. "She's gonna crack," he told himself. "No one can keep this up." Step 4. The psychology homework. And then came the book reports. Every night, Katie sat down with a self-help book on marriage and relationships, took actual notes, and then gave Mike a summary like a student turning in a final project. And it wasn't even half-hearted. "Oh, tonight's chapter was about emotional accountability," she'd say sweetly, flipping through her notes. "I learned that communication isn't just about talking, it's about active listening, too." Mike just stared at her. Who was this woman? Step 5. The public shame parade. And the cherry on top? Katie sent out a mass email to every friend and family member with a full-blown confession. "I, Katie, have behaved dishonorably. I hurt Mike with my actions. Though I did not cross a line completely, I disrespected him, and for that, I deeply regret my choices. I am now dedicated to proving my love and commitment." Mike could have died right there. She had self-snitched with the enthusiasm of a corporate employee owning up to embezzlement. This wasn't just commitment, this was insanity. And Mike wasn't buying a damn second of it. She was faking it. No way was this real. She was just waiting for him to drop his guard and then, boom, she'd go right back to her tequila-fueled shenanigans. Mike smirked to himself. "Oh, you can keep this up for now, sweetheart," he thought, sipping his coffee. "But I know you're just waiting to slip up. And when you do, I'll be ready." What he didn't know, however, was that Katie wasn't breaking anytime soon, and the real fun had only just begun. 2 weeks, 14 days, 336 hours. That's how long Mike had been waiting for Katie to break. Except, instead of breaking, Katie had somehow leveled up into some kind of hardcore repentance warrior. Mike sat on the couch, scrolling through her Instagram, still unable to process what he was seeing. There, in bold white letters against a dramatic black and white photo of her looking solemnly into the distance, was the caption, "Forgiveness must be earned through suffering." Mike choked on his coffee. "Excuse me, what?" He scrolled further. There was another picture of Katie, this time kneeling in front of a bookshelf filled with marriage counseling books, looking like she had just entered a monastery for troubled wives. Caption, "The path to redemption is long, but I shall walk it with dignity." Mike was spiraling. Was this a joke? And then came the poetry. If that wasn't enough, Katie had apparently decided that boring old daily reports weren't enough. No. She now sent her reports in rhymes. Yes, rhymes. One morning, while drinking his coffee, Mike opened his messages to find, "Good morning, my love, my king, my guide. Another day passes with you by my side. I cooked, I cleaned, I read, and I prayed, to be a good wife, my sins to outweigh." Mike stared at the screen. He read it again and again. He put his phone down. Then he picked it back up just to make sure this was really happening. His own wife had turned herself into some kind of medieval knight on a quest for atonement. What the hell? The in-law support group. Just when Mike thought things couldn't get any worse, his phone rang. It was Katie's father. Now Mike liked his father-in-law. He was a straight shooter, no nonsense, and had always been supportive. But this was new. "Mike, my boy," the old man boomed through the phone. "I just want to say, I respect the hell out of what you're doing. Teaching accountability, holding her to a higher standard. Brilliant." Mike almost dropped the phone. Thanks?" he said hesitantly. "No, really, son. You have no idea how proud I am of my little girl. It takes a strong woman to admit her mistakes and change, and it takes an even stronger man to help guide her there." Mike felt his soul leave his body. "She's lucky to have you, son. We all are. In fact, the whole family's been keeping up with her journey. Her mother even teared up at her last Instagram post. What a beautiful message about self-growth. Mike was officially sweating. This wasn't a punishment anymore. This was becoming a national movement. The public spectacle. As the days passed, it got worse. Suddenly, it felt like everyone in their circle was invested in this storyline. Katie's mom started texting her Bible verses about redemption. Her friends, the good ones, started cheering her on in the comments like she was training for a championship. Some random coworker of Mike's pulled him aside at work and whispered, "Hey man, I heard about what you're doing. Respect." Mike wanted to die. This was not how this was supposed to go. He had been the one in control. He was supposed to be the one watching Katie break down so he could move on, smug and victorious. Instead, he was now the unwilling main character in some kind of emotional reality show. And the worst part? Mike had no idea how to end it. A month. A whole damn month. Mike sat at the kitchen table rubbing his temples, feeling like a man who had planned the perfect crime only to end up locked in his own basement. This wasn't just backfiring. This was the emotional equivalent of stepping on a rake. Repeatedly. Katie? Still going strong, still thriving, still making him look like a marriage coach rather than a guy who just wanted a petty revenge divorce. Even the damn dog seemed to respect her more now. Mike's phone buzzed. It was his lawyer. "Hey Mike, just checking in. You ready to pull the trigger on those divorce papers?" Mike stared at the message. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. His grand plan had been so simple. 1. Make insane demands. 2. Watch her fail. 3. Serve divorce papers like a boss. And yet, here he was. Mike didn't plan for this. He didn't plan for Katie to become the world's most dedicated, repentant wife. He didn't plan for his in-laws to turn him into a marital hero. And most of all, he sure as hell didn't plan to feel guilty. But here he was, questioning everything. His phone buzzed again. This time, his best friend, Jake. Mike instantly called him. If there was anyone who could talk sense into him, it was Jake. "Dude," Mike groaned, "I am in so much trouble." Jake chuckled. "What? She finally snapped?" "No. Worse. Worse. She's winning." There was a pause. "Come again?" Mike dragged a hand down his face. "She's doing everything. She quit social media. She wakes up at 5 a.m. to read relationship books. She writes me poetry, Jake." Another pause. "You're saying she's literally doing everything you asked?" "Yes. And that's bad because," Mike groaned, "because this wasn't supposed to happen. She was supposed to give up, storm out, and then bam, I get my divorce without all the drama." "So," Jake cleared his throat, "you made her a better wife, and now you're mad about it?" Mike felt his soul leave his body. "You don't get it, man," he said. "Now everyone expects me to forgive her." Jake let out a low whistle. "Oof, yeah, that's rough. I mean, you get it, right? You get why I can't just stay in this marriage now?" Another pause. Then, "I don't know, man. It kind of sounds like you guys are doing great." Mike almost threw his phone out the window. "Jake, focus. I can't just let this go." Jake sighed. "Look, dude, at the end of the day, it's your call. But from where I'm standing, you have a wife who's literally doing backflips to prove she loves you. Maybe just consider that." Mike hung up. Useless. Completely useless. He decided. The plan remains. He was going to divorce her, no matter what. And then, ta-da! Mike turned around. There was Katie, holding up a freaking whiteboard with a chart of her marriage redemption progress. Mike blinked. "What the hell?" "I made a tracker," Katie beamed. "Look, 100% attendance for morning check-ins, 30 days straight of apology poetry, even got a gold star for no social media relapses." Mike wanted to scream. This was an Olympic event to her now. Then she smiled sweetly. "So, what do you think? Are you happy with my progress?" Mike opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out, so he just stood there, silent, like a complete idiot. Katie waited, smiling, expectant. Mike. He had no idea what the hell he was supposed to say, so Mike said he was in a hurry to run an errand and quickly left the house. He decided to postpone this conversation until later. Before you find out what happens next, please subscribe to the channel. A day later, this happened. Mike sat at the dinner table watching Katie carefully slice a roasted chicken like she was competing on MasterChef, Redemption Edition. She had prepared a full 3-course meal, complete with candles and soft jazz playing in the background. It was ridiculous. He could feel her eyes on him, expectant, like a student waiting for a grade. He knew what was coming. "So, Mike," Katie said sweetly, placing a perfectly plated dish in front of him. "Now that I've exceeded all of your expectations, what's next? Do I get my forgiveness badge now?" Mike clenched his jaw. He couldn't do this anymore. It was time to drop the nuke. He put down his fork, took a deep breath, and said, "Katie, this was all a prank." Silence. Katie blinked. "A what?" "A prank," Mike repeated, shifting uncomfortably. "I never actually planned on forgiving you. The rules, the suffering, the whole monkwife act, it was just to push you to your breaking point so you'd leave first." He exhaled, relieved to have finally said it. "I'm still divorcing you." Another silence. Katie's hands were still delicately folded in her lap, her face expressionless. She nodded, very slowly. Then, with the calm precision of a serial killer preparing their next move, she stood up, took a deep breath, and snapped a plate in half. "Oh, whoops," she said, tossing the shattered pieces aside. She turned and accidentally knocked over a chair. "Geez, I'm just so clumsy today." Then, without warning, she grabbed the entire salad bowl and flung it into the sink, where it shattered into green and ceramic chaos. Mike shot up from his seat. "Katie, what the hell?" "Oh, nothing," she said, voice saccharine sweet. "Just a minor outburst from a silly little wife who just wasted a month of her life for a petty husband's revenge fantasy." Mike took a step back. He could see it in her eyes. If she had laser vision, he'd be extra crispy by now. Inside, Katie was screaming. This man really just made me go full Stepford wife for nothing? He made me cook, clean, write poetry, humiliate myself publicly, and quit social media for a prank? Oh, hell no. If she had to suffer, then so would he. She turned back to Mike, smoothing her hair and smiling. "All right, darling. If you're still divorcing me, then I guess there's nothing left to do but accept it." Mike narrowed his eyes. He didn't trust this. "Okay?" Katie shrugged, casually grabbing her phone. "I'll just have to move on. But before that, I guess I should wrap up a few things." Now Katie was working out her plan for revenge. Step 1. Merging with the mother-in-law. First order of business? Befriending Mike's mother. The next morning, Katie showed up at his mom's house with pastries and a fake tear in her eye. "Mrs. Johnson," she said, voice trembling just enough, "I've worked so hard to be a better wife, and Mike, he just refuses to see it. I don't know what to do." Boom. Mission accomplished. By that evening, Mike's own mother was on the phone with him, laying into him like an unpaid therapist. "I just don't understand, Michael. After everything that poor girl has done, you're still leaving her? You don't just throw away a marriage? You're just like your father, always running." Mike pinched the bridge of his nose. "Mom, don't start." "No, I will start. I raised you better than this. You're not even giving her a chance. She's changed. She's wonderful. She brought me fresh cinnamon rolls this morning. When have you ever done that?" Mike groaned. Katie was weaponizing baked goods. Step 2. The lawyer from hell. Katie wasn't just angry. She was strategizing. If Mike wanted to play games, then she was about to flip the entire board. Enter Leonard, the vulture Whitman, divorce attorney extraordinaire. The kind of guy who probably had a framed picture of alimony settlements in his office. When Katie explained the situation, Leonard smiled like a man who had just smelled fresh blood in the water. "Oh, this is juicy," he said, twirling his pen like a villain about to monologue. So, he made you jump through hoops for a month, publicly humiliated you, and now he wants to discard you like an old sock? Katie nodded. Yep. Leonard leaned back, cracking his knuckles. Let's make sure he regrets everything. A few hours later, an official-looking email landed in Mike's inbox, the subject line alone enough to freeze his soul. Preliminary notice of potential legal actions. Leonard Whitman, Esq. Mike's stomach dropped. He clicked it open. The letter was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. Dear Mr. Johnson, it has come to my client's attention that, after willingly participating in a corrective marital process initiated by yourself, you are now seeking dissolution of the marriage. While my client wishes for an amicable resolution, she reserves the right to pursue the following claims should formal divorce proceedings begin. Emotional distress, compensation. My client was subjected to an unreasonable list of degrading conditions under the pretense of marital reconciliation, leading to undue mental anguish. Reputational damage claims. Due to the public nature of her forced admissions, my client has suffered irreversible damage to her social standing and may seek financial reparations. Unjust, psychological burden. The expectation to function under extreme marital expectations has resulted in documented psychological strain. Marital investment compensation. Given her dedicated efforts to fulfill your conditions, my client reserves the right to claim financial restitution for the time and resources spent adhering to your arbitrary demands. This notice does not indicate immediate legal action, but serves as a formal caution regarding the potential consequences of proceeding with a divorce. Warm regards, Leonard Whitman, Esq. Mike felt the walls closing in. This wasn't just a legal threat. This was a hostage situation. The worst part? It wasn't technically a lawsuit. Yet. No court filings, no official papers, just a looming sword of financial doom hanging over his head, ready to drop the second he made a wrong move. Mike rubbed his temples. How had this gone so horribly wrong? Step 3, the ultimate slow burn. But the worst part? Katie was still acting like the perfect wife. Every morning she sent her location check-ins. Every night she read her marriage books. She still made him gourmet meals like a loving wife. She was outpatiencing him. One evening, while Mike sat there, stressed beyond belief, Katie leaned in and whispered, "How's that divorce coming along, honey?" Mike just stared at her. This was not a woman who was going down easy. Katie smirked. "Oh, don't mind me, I'm just a loyal wife fulfilling her husband's expectations." She kissed his cheek and walked away, leaving him in a state of pure existential crisis. Mike had played himself hard. Despite Katie's ongoing saintly act and her little legal landmine, Mike decided he was done. He called his lawyer and gave the go signal for the divorce paperwork. Enough was enough. No more games. No more Stepford wife theatrics. No more Katie. That night, as they sat in awkward silence over dinner, Mike finally snapped, "You don't have to keep pretending, Katie. The divorce is happening. All of this?" He gestured vaguely at the perfectly prepared meal, the calm demeanor, the twinkle of mischief in her eyes. "It's not gonna save our marriage." Katie smiled. That smile. The kind of smile that made Mike feel like a small woodland creature about to be eaten by a much larger predator. "Oh, Mike," she said sweetly, placing a delicate hand on his. "We'll see about that." Then she kissed him on the forehead like he was a child who had just made a terrible mistake and sauntered off. Mike sat there, unnerved but determined. She's bluffing. Oh, if only. The next morning, Mike stumbled into the kitchen, groggy and utterly oblivious to the chaos that was about to unfold. Katie, in her perfect housewife persona, handed him a steaming cup of coffee. "Here you go, honey," she cooed. Mike, still too sleepy to register her suspiciously pleasant tone, took a huge gulp. "Thanks," he muttered. Katie smiled, watching him drink. Mike finished his coffee and went off to work, blissfully unaware that his day was about to take a very uncomfortable turn. It started slowly, a slight tightness. then a warming sensation. Then, before he could fully grasp what was happening, it hit him like a freight train. Oh no, it's like a flagpole on the 4th of July. Mike froze at his desk. His entire lower half was betraying him. The panic set in. He shifted uncomfortably, trying to adjust himself, but it only made things worse. His pants were now the enemy. This was not happening. He frantically grabbed anything within reach, a folder, a coffee mug, even his laptop, strategically placing them over his lap like some desperate, poorly disguised cover-up operation. His coworkers started noticing. First, a few amused glances, then the whispers, then the muffled laughter. Mike tried to stay calm, but every time he shifted, his situation made itself painfully obvious. Then came the final blow. Just before lunch, a voice rang through the office. "Hey, Mike, someone's got a delivery for you." Mike looked up and felt his soul detach from his body. At the entrance stood a massive, jacked black guy in a tight shirt, holding a Tupperware container. Mike blinked. No. Before he could react, the guy smiled, threw open his arms, and announced to the entire office, "Honey, you forgot your lunch, baby. I couldn't let my man go hungry." Silence. Deafening silence. Then pure, unfiltered chaos. The entire office exploded into laughter, gasps, and choking fits. Mike sat there, paralyzed. "What the?" The guy strutted forward, placing the lunchbox on Mike's desk with an exaggerated wink. "I made it just the way you like it, sweetheart." Mike's brain short-circuited. The guy leaned in closer, voice dripping with suggestiveness. "Hope you come home early tonight, baby. Let's make it as unforgettable as last night." And then, with a dramatic twirl, he pranced out of the office. Absolute pandemonium. People were screaming, wheezing, crying from laughter. Someone literally fell out of their chair. Mike frantically jumped up. No, this is a prank. I am not." His coworkers weren't listening. One wiped away tears. "Damn, Mike, I didn't know you had a whole secret life." Another grinned. "Dude, you could have just told us." Then one of the women pointed at his lap. Mike? Maybe tone it down a little. You're broadcasting some very enthusiastic energy right now." More. Laughter. Mike looked down. Oh, for the love of... His damn morning coffee sabotage had fully backfired at the worst possible time. Mike wanted to die. The confrontation. Mike loses his mind. By the time Mike got home, his dignity was in shambles. He burst through the door, red-faced and furious. "Katie!" Katie, lounging on the couch, looked up innocently. "Oh, honey, you're home early. Good day at work?" Mike stared at her, fists clenched. "You know damn well?" Katie tilted her head. "Whatever do you mean?" Mike growled. "Don't play dumb. The coffee, the guy. You paid that dude to come to my work, didn't you?" Katie gasped, clutching her chest in fake shock. "Mike, are you suggesting I orchestrated such a cruel, humiliating prank on my own loving husband?" Mike glared. Katie smiled sweetly. "Well, prove it." Mike's eye twitched. "I swear to God." Katie sipped her tea, completely unbothered. Mike threw his hands up. "I'm gonna..." He pointed, searching for the right words. This is war." Katie shrugged. "You started it." Mike groaned, defeated. He had pranked the wrong woman. And now, he was living in a nightmare of his own creation. 2 days later, the battlefield was set. The courtroom. Mike sat with his lawyer, mentally preparing for war, while Katie sat across from him, prim and composed, radiating smug confidence. Her lawyer, Leonard the Vulture Whitman, was already sharpening his verbal knives, ready to slice Mike apart in legal combat. But what Katie didn't know, Mike had a secret weapon. See, over the years, Mike had noticed something about his darling wife. Whenever she was nervous or under pressure, she had a habit of reaching for her lip gloss, an automatic reflex to fix her look, even when no fixing was necessary. And today, Mike had prepared a special little surprise. Earlier that morning, he had managed to sneak a little something into her favorite lip gloss, a fine, near-invisible powder made from pure, concentrated chili pepper extract, the kind that made grown men cry. Now, as they sat in tense silence, the court proceedings began. Katie's lawyer wasted zero time getting to work. "Your Honor," Whitman declared, standing up dramatically, "my client has suffered immeasurable emotional distress due to the psychological torment imposed upon her by the plaintiff. This man subjected her to a modern-day inquisition, forcing her to abandon her friends, limit her personal freedom, and endure humiliating public confessions. And for what? A prank." He turned to Mike, eyes gleaming with theatrical disappointment. "Mr. Johnson manipulated my client, dragged her through psychological hell, and now seeks to discard her like a used tissue. We are prepared to fight for financial compensation for the damages done to my client's reputation, as well as an extended legal battle to delay this divorce indefinitely." Mike gritted his teeth. This was worse than he expected. Katie was really trying to make him suffer. His lawyer jumped in, countering every point, deflecting accusations, and trying to prevent Katie from taking half of everything he owned. But Mike could tell. It wasn't looking good. Then, in the heat of the argument, it happened. Katie, clearly feeling the tension, casually reached into her bag, pulled out her lip gloss, and applied a thick, generous coat. Mike watched in slow motion, his heart pounding with excitement. Yes. Yes. That's it. At first, she seemed fine, for about 20 seconds. Then, the burn kicked in. Her lips twitched. She smacked them together once, twice. Her eyes widened. The tingling turned into fire. Mike watched, biting his tongue to keep from grinning. Katie tried to remain composed, but then she subtly licked her lips. A fatal mistake. The capsaicin spread. She sucked in air sharply. Mike could see her hands clenching into fists, her eyes starting to water. Then, boom! Katie jumped up like a woman possessed. I need to step out," she squeaked, her voice suddenly 2 octaves higher. She practically bolted from the room, leaving the judge, the lawyers, and even the stenographer completely bewildered. Mike, meanwhile, was vibrating with pure joy. He had to physically stop himself from high-fiving his lawyer. After a few agonizing minutes, Katie returned, lips still pink, slightly swollen, and, most importantly, seething with rage. She sat down without a word, glaring daggers at Mike, who simply flashed his most innocent smile. The session dragged on, but with Katie's dramatic exit and the chaotic back and forth between lawyers, the judge decided to delay the final decision, postponing the next hearing. Mike considered it a win. That night they met again at home. The air was thick with unspoken rage. Katie, still recovering from her unexpected spicy lip malfunction, stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "Mike," she said, voice cold, "just surrender. You made your little point. You wanted me to prove my love. I did. You wanted me to suffer? I did. You wanted me to play by your rules? I did. Be a man and keep your word." Mike leaned back on the couch, arms folded. I don't know, Katie. I haven't gone on my date yet." Silence. Katie's eyes narrowed. She wasn't stupid. She saw exactly what he was doing. "So that's your move, huh?" she said, tilting her head. "Fine. Go on a date. I hope you enjoy it." Mike smirked, but inside he wasn't smirking at all, because now it was his turn to survive. "I wanted to teach her a lesson," he thought to himself, "but now I'm the one taking a damn survival test. Either I break her, or her psycho lawyer will leave me bankrupt." Katie smiled, a slow, victorious smile. "Your move, sweetheart." Mike exhaled. This was it. The final battle. And he had no idea how it was going to end. Mike sat on his couch, phone in hand, frantically swiping through a dating app like a man searching for a last-minute lifeline. He needed a date, not just any date, a revenge date. One that would make Katie boil with jealousy, crack under the pressure, and ultimately mess up so badly that he could finally expose her as the one who failed their twisted agreement. But there was a problem. Mike had zero game. For the past 2 hours, he had sent out dozens of messages. Responses? A whole lot of nothing. Apparently, women weren't lining up to date a guy with a suspiciously recent divorce case and a profile that read, "Just looking for someone to casually destroy my ex-wife with." He was about to give up, ready to accept his fate as a defeated man, when, ding, a match. Mike froze. Then he stared at the screen, heart racing. There she was, Wendy, stunning, flawless, like someone who just walked off the set of a perfume commercial. And she was interested. Mike grinned like an idiot and sent her a message. Within minutes, she responded enthusiastically. This was it. His golden ticket. The next morning, Mike strolled into the kitchen like a man with all the power in the world. He casually poured himself a cup of coffee, leaned against the counter, and, without looking at Katie, announced with the smooth arrogance of a guy who just won $1 million. "I'm going on a date tonight." Katie, sitting at the table, froze mid-sip of her tea. She slowly lowered the cup, her face neutral, but her knuckles slightly white from gripping the handle. "Oh?" she said coolly, forcing a smile. "Good for you, sweetheart." Mike smirked. He could see the tiny crack in her expression. He had won this round, or so he thought. While Mike was smugly prepping for his revenge date, the two legal masterminds behind this chaotic divorce circus were busy crafting their next insane moves. Leonard the Vulture Whitman, Katie's lawyer, leaned forward in his leather chair, tapping his fingers together like a Bond villain. "Listen, Katie," he said, voice dripping with confidence. "Mike thinks he's in control. But what he doesn't realize is that we have the upper hand. He just announced his date, correct?" Katie nodded. "Yes. And I pretended to be totally chill about it." Leonard grinned. "Excellent. Here's what we do. We let him go on the date. But during the hearing, we frame it as emotional retaliation and psychological warfare. We will claim he intentionally put you through mental agony by parading another woman around while you were faithfully upholding your commitment. Then we demand an increase in compensation for emotional distress." Katie blinked. "You think that'll work?" Leonard smirked. "Katie, I once won a case arguing that a man's bad energy was grounds for a financial settlement. Trust me." Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Mike's lawyer, Greg Patterson Eskers, was just as unhinged. "Mike, listen to me," Greg said, pacing his office like a football coach giving a halftime speech. "This is brilliant. The moment Katie shows any jealousy, any cracks, we strike. We file a counterclaim stating that her attempts to block your natural healing process are signs of controlling behavior. We can flip this entire narrative, making her the unreasonable one." Mike squinted. "You sure this will work?" Greg slammed the desk. "Mike, I once got a guy out of alimony by arguing that his wife's bad cooking was an act of culinary neglect. I am a legal genius." Mike took a deep breath. "All right, let's do this." That evening, Mike arrived at the fanciest restaurant in town, a place so upscale that even the bread had its own waiter. He strutted in like a man on top of the world, knowing Katie was probably at home dying of jealousy. He was ready to make this an unforgettable evening. He took his seat, ordered a whiskey, because tonight was about dominance, and started planning. Step 1, take a few well-angled selfies to post later. Step 2, charm Wendy enough to convince her to stick around for a more public hangout spot. The stage was set. The ultimate Mike victory was about to unfold, or so he thought. Because what Mike didn't know, Wendy wasn't who she seemed to be. Mike sat at the fancy restaurant, drumming his fingers on the table, smug as hell. Wendy was going to show up any minute. But as the minutes ticked by, something felt off. He checked his phone. No messages, no updates. Then, out of nowhere, a large shadow loomed over the table. Mike looked up. It was not Wendy. Instead, standing there was a sweaty, overweight guy in a wrinkled button-up, clutching his phone with a very similar look of disappointment. "Are you Wendy?" The guy grunted. Mike frowned. "Yeah, why?" Oh, damn it. I meant I'm Mike. The guy let out a frustrated groan. Son of a... I knew it. I was supposed to meet a girl named Wendy here, but instead, I find you. They stared at each other. Realization hit them both at the same time. No way. She scammed both of us? Mike shouted, slamming his fist on the table. The guy growled. I knew that profile was too good to be true. They both started yelling and blaming each other, as if the other man was somehow responsible for their mutual humiliation. You probably scared her off, looking like a rejected car salesman, Mike snapped. Oh yeah? At least I don't look like some guy who still listens to motivational podcasts and thinks it's gonna fix his life. The argument escalated fast, until a very angry waiter and 2 busboys had to physically push both of them out the door. As Mike stumbled onto the sidewalk, red-faced and furious, the last thing he heard was a waiter yelling, "And don't come back!" Mike stood there, panting, hands on his hips. And then it hit him. Katie. This was her doing. That fake profile, the too good to be true match, the mystery ghosting. It had her evil fingerprints all over it. Grinding his teeth, he stormed to his car and peeled out of the parking lot. When Mike burst through the front door, he already knew what was coming. Katie was sitting on the couch, smug as hell. Good date, sweetheart? She asked, her grin stretching ear to ear. Mike forced a smile. Oh yeah, fantastic. Wendy sends her love. Katie snorted into her tea. Mike kept his cool, not letting her have the satisfaction of seeing him crack. But as soon as she left the room, he grabbed a pair of scissors, stormed over to her chargers, and snipped through every single one. Let's see her create fake accounts when she can't charge her phone. That'll teach her, he thought, grinning like a madman as he tossed the remains into the trash. Feeling accomplished, Mike crawled into bed, finally getting the upper hand. At 2 a.m., the sound of sloshing water was the only warning Mike got before a freezing cold tsunami crashed onto his face. Ah! What the... Mike shot up, drenched, gasping for air. His blanket soaked, his pajamas clinging to his skin. Katie stood over him, holding an empty bucket, her face a mix of righteous fury and wicked delight. That's for my chargers, you petty little gremlin. Mike jumped out of bed, dripping all over the floor. You're insane! Oh, I'm insane! Katie snapped. You sabotaged my freaking phone, Mike! Mike lunged at her. Katie darted away, and thus began the most childish chase scene in divorce history. Katie sprinted down the hallway, laughing like a lunatic, while Mike slipped and stumbled behind her, still soaking wet. She ducked into the bathroom, slamming the door shut. Mike banged on it. Open the damn door, Katie. Nope. Stay mad. Just as Katie flung the door open to make her escape, Mike managed to grab a bottle of shampoo and launched a handful of it straight at her. Splat. Shampoo. Everywhere. Katie shrieked as the soapy liquid hit her hair, arms, and face. You son of a... She grabbed a second bucket of water from the tub and threw it at him. Mike dodged, but only slightly, so now not only was he wet, but also covered in half-lathered shampoo. Then Katie slipped. Then Mike slipped. Then they both crashed onto the floor, screaming. For the next 5 minutes, 2 full-grown adults slid across the floor like malfunctioning penguins, yelling insults at each other. You're a lunatic, Mike shouted. You started it, you overgrown child, Katie yelled back. By the time they both ran out of energy, they were lying side by side, breathless, covered in suds, water, and mutual hatred. The floor was a flooded mess. Everything reeked of artificial coconut and regret. Mike just stared at the ceiling. Katie did the same. Neither of them could move without slipping again. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Katie let out a weak chuckle. You look ridiculous, Mike groaned. Shut up. Silence. Then Katie sighed. So, who's cleaning this up? Mike exhaled. Not me. And so they just laid there, soaking wet, trapped in a shampoo-slicked battlefield, too exhausted to fight anymore. Silence hung between them, broken only by their heavy breathing. Then, as if nothing had just happened, Katie turned her head slightly and muttered, You do realize my lawyer's going to absolutely destroy yours, right? Mike, still panting, snorted, "Pfft, please. Your lawyer's a bloodthirsty vulture in a suit, but my guy, he's a freaking magician. I once saw him get a guy out of paying alimony by arguing that his wife's emotional support cat had too much influence in the marriage." Katie let out a weak chuckle. "Oh yeah? Well, my guy once convinced a judge that a woman deserved financial compensation because her husband's bad energy gave her insomnia." Mike propped himself up on one elbow, scoffing. "Amateur hour. My lawyer got a client a settlement payout because his wife didn't laugh at his jokes enough." Katie's eyes widened. "No way." Mike smirked. "Way." And just like that, they were arguing like two kids on a playground, passionately defending their respective legal assassins. "My guy would wipe the floor with yours in court. Oh, please, Leonard would eat your guy for breakfast. You're delusional. Greg is a genius in legal loopholes." They kept bickering, but somewhere in the middle of it, something strange happened. For the first time in weeks, neither of them was angry. Neither of them was plotting their next attack. They were just having fun. Mike suddenly realized it. So did Katie. They both paused, blinking at each other. And then, simultaneously, Mike blurted out, "How much are you paying your lawyer?" Katie raised a brow. $350 an hour. Why? Mike's mouth fell open. $350? Are you insane? Katie scoffed. And what about your guy? Mike hesitated. $400. Katie's jaw dropped. $400 an hour? Are you insane? They both sat up, staring at each other in horror. For the first time, they weren't trying to destroy each other. They were united in financial despair. Wait, Katie said, rubbing her temples. We've had 4 major meetings each with these guys? And emails, calls, paperwork? Mike's brain started doing the math. Then they both whispered the realization at the same time. We're gonna go broke. A new kind of silence filled the air. A deep, soul-crushing silence. And then, almost as if their brains short-circuited at the exact same moment, they turned to each other and said, in perfect unison, "What if we don't get divorced?" Another beat. "And just keep torturing each other?" Katie gasped. "Oh my God! Are we actually perfect for each other?" Mike sat back, staring at the ceiling. Holy crap! We're soulmates. They looked at each other, processing this completely unhinged revelation. Then, slowly, they started laughing. Not just giggling, full, uncontrollable, psychotic laughter. This entire time they had been trying to ruin each other, but the truth was, they were having way too much fun. Katie wiped a tear from her eye. We're actually the worst people on the planet. Mike sighed. And I'm kind of okay with that. They helped each other off the floor, staggering toward the bathroom to get rid of the shampoo disaster. Somehow, not slipping again felt like a bigger challenge than the divorce itself. After an extensive cleanup, they both threw on dry clothes and collapsed onto the couch, mentally and physically drained. Then, Katie grabbed her phone. I'm starving. Mike shrugged. Diner's closed. It's 4 a.m. Katie smirked. Ever heard of food delivery, genius? A few taps later, pizza, burgers, and a bottle of whiskey were on their way. And so, in the most bizarre turn of events, they spent the rest of the night laughing, drinking, and reminiscing over their best pranks. Katie admitted to hiring the fake boyfriend to humiliate Mike at work and dosing his coffee with a little extra excitement. Mike confessed to the chili powder in her lip gloss. They both roared with laughter, shaking their heads at their own insanity. And somewhere, in the middle of junk food, confessions, and whiskey-fueled storytelling, it hit them. They weren't just opponents in a war. They were partners in absolute chaos. The next day, Mike and Katie marched into their lawyers' offices, this time together. Greg, Mike's lawyer, looked up, grinning. Mike, buddy? Ready to destroy her in court today? Leonard, Katie's lawyer, adjusted his tie, smirking. Oh, please, your client is about to get financially flattened. Mike and Katie exchanged glances. Then, in perfect unison, they said, Yeah, about that. We're not getting divorced. Silence. Greg's pen slipped from his fingers. Sorry, what? Leonard blinked rapidly, like he had just heard a foreign language. Excuse me? Mike shrugged. Yeah, turns out we're actually perfect for each other. So, we're staying married. Katie smiled sweetly. Thanks for everything, though. You guys were almost worth the ridiculous hourly rate. Both lawyers just stared at them, as if someone had just told them Santa Claus wasn't real. Greg, now pale, whispered, I already put a down payment on a new boat. Leonard, gripping his briefcase like a widow at a funeral, muttered, I told my wife we'd finally go to Paris. Mike patted Greg on the shoulder. Tough break, buddy. And just like that, the most pointless, expensive, and ridiculous legal war of the century was over. Mike and Katie officially canceled the divorce, shocking friends, family, and their entire social circle. Mike's mom wept tears of joy. I knew you two were destined for each other, Katie's dad sighed in relief. Thank God. Now I don't have to pretend to like your lawyers anymore. Even Mike's co-workers, who had thoroughly enjoyed his humiliation, congratulated him. Honestly, man, one said, clapping him on the back, your marriage is the most entertaining thing I've ever seen. Mike and Katie, they were happier than ever. But, of course, some habits never die. One morning, Mike woke up to all of his work shoes glued to the floor. The next week, Katie opened her closet, and a tiny air horn went off. The prank war never truly ended. But hey, what's marriage without a little mischief? And so, dear reader, this ridiculous, petty, dramatic, beautiful love story comes to an end. Mike and Katie, they learned that love isn't just about romance, it's about driving each other insane in the best possible way. So whether you're married, dating, or still searching for your perfect chaotic match, remember, life is short, love is messy, and the best relationships? They come with a little bit of laughter and a whole lot of fun. Here's to a happy marriage and a well-timed prank. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to the channel. I wish you a great mood and good luck.